Reading shorter fiction allows you to explore and experience a wide range of authors, topics, genres, so on and so forth, that maybe you didn't have the time for in the past, or you weren't so sure about, or whatever, like without the significant time commitment of reading full length works in this genre or by this author or whatever. Like for me, this is how I discovered a lot of great authors that I now love and now have read like full 600-page novels by, because I started off by reading some of their short stories. I also like got to experience different like writing styles that usually I wouldn't be so inclined to read. Like I'm not a big like first person narrator reader. Like I don't really like when a book is all written with I the whole way through. That has changed. That's changed a lot. But I really had to ease myself into it. So I have compiled a list of some of the best short stories, novellas, and books under 300 pages, which is still, you know, it's still up there. And I'm going to share them with you. The list, it ranges from 64 pages, that's the shortest book on this list, and the longest is 260. But I would say most of them, like 80% of the list, under 200 pages long. I want to share with you my reasons for why shorter books are so, so brilliant and 1,000% worth your time. Okay, shall we begin? The shortest book on this list is one that I have spoken about at length in another video, so I won't go into too much depth, but it is In the Act by Rachel Ingalls. It is a 64-page satirical sci-fi fiction 80s feminist novella that is brilliant, funny, intelligent, subversive. It is about a woman named Helen who discovers something in her husband's workshop one day, a secret project he's been working on, that levels the playing field in their marriage at the very least, and also kind of will affect the relationship between men and women forever. And yeah, she kind of uses it to mess things up a little. It's such a great book. I love it. I love Ingalls' writing, and this is a must-read. The English Understand World by Helen DeWitt is a 69-page masterpiece. It's witty. It's intelligent. Like it's so clever. It leaves you speechless. It is actually awe-inducing. We follow a young girl who grew up very wealthy, a very fortunate lifestyle, with parents that loved her very much and raised her incredibly well. You know, she's well educated, she's kind, she plays instruments, she has, you know, skills, hobbies, whatever, well-rounded person. And above all, she was raised to never do things in bad taste. This is like an obsession in her family. It's like their code of conduct is just never act in bad taste. And so she doesn't, you know, she carries this with her through this circumstance that is less than ideal, because she wakes up one morning to find out that her parents have committed a terrible, terrible, terrible crime. Or at least that's the narrative that the media is pushing. Our main character, she does not feel this way. She doesn't feel like or act like the victim that people expect her to or want her to. And she kind of turns everything on its head. She uses her skills, her lifestyle, everything to improve her situation after this revelation that her parents are terrible criminals. This, above all else, is kind of a story about media vulturism, you know, media vulture culture, and how people will always kind of root for the worst thing to happen to you, for the worst outcome, just because it makes the best story. But it's also kind of a story about ingenuity and resourcefulness and not being who people expect you to be. I love this book so much. It's great, and it's 69 pages long, so I think everybody should read it, and I think that's a realistic goal, given its length. It's very manageable. A great thing about shorter fiction is that the kind of concise narrative and really focused storytelling, it obviously makes for a very impactful story, like great storytelling, but I think it also enhances like your engagement with the work, because like, you know, entertainment value wise, but also in terms of your comprehension of the message that the author is trying to share, you know, and like that's especially important if the book is broaching a topic that is important in some way, or impactful or meaningful, either to the author or to yourself or to the world. Silver in the Wood. This is 112 pages. It is by Emily Tesh, and it is actually one of two in a duology. So even though this is one book on the list, if you like this and this kind of hooks you, you know, maybe you're watching this because you're in a reading slump and you want some short books to get you back into it, then if you like this one, you have something else to immediately jump into because both parts are already out. This 112-page novella, I feel like it's still a novella at that length, is about Henry Silver, the Silver in the Wood, and Tobias Finch. These are two people, so, you know, so to say, that find themselves in an English woodland area. Tobias has lived there for a very long time, and he's kind of the groundskeeper of the woods, unofficially maybe. He takes care of the creatures, he tends to the trees, and yeah, he has this nice little cottage there, and he is very happy and has been for many years. Then Henry Silver comes along. Henry Silver is an amateur folklorist, and he just puts his nose all in Tobias's business. He's very obsessed and like fixated on the stories of the magical creatures that inhabit this woods and all of the myths and the legends and everything. And Tobias doesn't really indulge him. They form a relationship along the way, and Henry Silver ends up learning and experiencing a lot more than he bargained for. I absolutely love this duology, and part of the reason for that is because of its brevity. Because I love fantasy and I love like these magical worlds with all of their like world building and rules and, you know, all of these things, all of the creatures and blah blah blah. But sometimes it's just a mammoth task to begin a fantasy novel because you just know that it's one of many in a series that are all very, very long, and that can be kind of daunting. So I was very happy. I felt very blessed to find this duology because it's kind of satisfied that fantasy magical woodland craving without me having to read like 20,000 pages of a fantasy saga. So yeah. Prosper's Demon is also 112 pages long. It is by KJ Parker, and it is a dark comedy with an unnamed, morally ambiguous main character who has been blessed with the gift of being able to communicate with and exorcise demons from people, of course. And not only can he, you know, spot them, communicate with them, try and coax them out, but he can literally like pull them out by force, which isn't always the most gentle method, but it's certainly effective. He basically has spent his whole life communing with demons, of which there are a limited number. So he's developed a relationship with some of them, and there's always this back and forth between him and some of the demons he meets, which is very funny. But the kind of main story here is that Prosper of Chance, I believe, is a like philosopher, author, multi-talented guy, very smart. He's a scientist, he's a philosopher, he's a genius. And he has kind of partnered up with the royal family to raise their newborn baby. And he has great plans, high plans. You know, he's going to do great things with this baby. Or at least he would. At least he would if he weren't demonically possessed. So that is kind of the story that we're working with, is how our narrator will remedy this situation. This reason is like much less of a noble one, but I get such a sense of accomplishment when I finish reading a book, and you probably do too. Like, who doesn't, you know?
And the sense of accomplishment you feel after finishing a book in 1 or 2 sittings, just being able to say, oh, I read In the Act by Rachel Ingalls over my lunch break. I read it while I was waiting for the bus this morning. Like, unparalleled. Like, absolutely incredible.
The Outsider by Albert Camus is 116 pages, and it is kind of existential fiction about an Algerian man who finds himself intertwined within a murder that definitely didn't need to happen, that is surrounded by a lot of passion and things that he is actually kind of indifferent to, because our main character, our protagonist, is, of course, an outsider. He doesn't really care for societal norms. He doesn't really seem to emote in the same way that normal people do, and he kind of is just incredibly apathetic to the situation that he finds himself in. And we just follow how the story unfolds with him at the center of it, and how he has ended up, being a central component in a terribly unnecessary murder. I can't believe so many of these books sound so dark. They really aren't that dark. This one especially it's not that terrible, I promise. Like, yeah, there's murder in it, but it's not like a horror or even really a thriller, actually. Mickey, what do you think of The Outsider? He's purring, he likes it. It's a good book. You have good taste.
I think reading shorter fiction is a great way to retrain your brain if you're someone who's struggled with like dopamine addiction. And if sitting down to read a 600-page novel feels like a feat you just won't accomplish, even if you tried it for months and months, like that can be really discouraging. Knowing that you really only have to sit still for 20 pages and then do it again the next day and the book is basically finished, it's really like dangling a carrot in front of a horse on a stick, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, just a little more, just a little more. And it feels much more manageable, and in a way that helps you develop your focus, because if you can sit down to read a short story that's 20 pages, you can sit down to read a 60-page novella. If you can sit down to read a 60-page novella, you can split a 100-page book up into 2 sittings. And if you can do that, well, you just maybe need a week and you can read a 300-page book. You know, it's that kind of brain training. Like running a marathon, 5K at a time.
The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum by Heinrich Böll is in my hands right here. And it is 140 pages that tell the story of media sensationalism and the blurring of fact and fiction and what is truth and how does the media lie to us and all of these things, you know, who can we trust, so on and so forth. And it does all of this by having somebody confess to a crime. And Katerina, our protagonist, she's at the center of the story. She finds herself in a web of opinions about her, right? Through opinions that are presented as fact and sold to the public and to kind of us as a reader in many cases as the truth about who she is. And that truth is that she is a slut. She is a criminal. She is evil, but also that she's a victim and that she's actually very sweet and kind. And maybe she didn't do all these terrible things, but maybe she did. And Katerina actually didn't do anything at all, as far as we know, right off the bat, except sleep with a guy. That's it. That's all she did. She's just like trapped in this cage of public scrutiny. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata is 163 pages long and centers around a 30-year-old woman that has worked in a convenience store for her entire adult life.
And she's happy with it. She's content to wake up every morning, put on her uniform, walk down to the convenience store, repeat the company mantra, stock shelves, smile at customers, and eat the same convenience store food day in, day out. But her contentment does not stop everybody in her life, her sister, her family, her childhood friends, from just bugging her. Like, when are you going to conform to society's expectations of you, Kay? When are you going to settle down, get a real career, marry a man, have children? When are you going to do these things? Everybody else has. Our protagonist, she isn't really bothered by this like onslaught of pressure, like perpetual pressure from the people around her. But she is starting to feel a little bothered by it. Not maybe emotionally deep down. She's not very like upset, or just annoyed. Like, can they just shut up? So she kind of decides to, when the opportunity presents itself, take matters into her own hands, only to find that conforming doesn't bring her the same joy as working in a convenience store. And that is this story. I think reading shorter fiction is just a great way to get out of a reading slump. It's less daunting, there's a bigger sense of accomplishment maybe, and you get to engage with the piece more. Like everything I've mentioned, it just creates the perfect cocktail. So that was my list of shorter fiction and why you should be reading it. You will find many different topics and themes and surprisingly large amount of media and political critique, but that's the point. They're getting the messages out there. I'm sure you'll find something you enjoy. Look, you can't read everything. There are a lot of voices out there. There are a lot of messages that deserve to be heard, a lot of things that we can learn from a lot of different authors and the stories that they tell. But you probably won't be able to read it all. You can try. You can try. And at least for me, this is one of the best ways to do that. One of the best ways to hear as many of those voices as possible, by picking up shorter books, breezing through them, and sitting with them for a very long time, because they tend to be very impactful. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you enjoy reading some of these books. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye.